On the other side of toxic Christianity, I found myself faced with one question. Now what? This podcast is about that question. We have conversations with folks who are asking themselves the same things. We're picking up the pieces of a fractured and fragmented faith. We're finding treasure in what the church called trash, beauty and solidarity in people and places we were told to fear, reject, and dismiss. I'm Tammy Spencer Helms, and this is Life After 11. Okay, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this episode of Life After 11. I'm your host, Tammy Spencer Helms, and I'm joined by Adam Evers. I can't wait for you all to meet this person, and I'm going to have him introduce himself, but I am so indebted to him, and as you listen to the episode, you'll see why. So Adam, tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. My name is Adam. Pronouns are he, him. I am the leader, dude, whatever you want to call me, for Believer, co-founder, leader for Believer. And then I also run a nonprofit called New Foundation. So Believer is the world's first and only LGBTQI Christian dating app out there. So we're on the Apple Store and the iOS and Android Play Store. And then New Foundation is a nonprofit that my partner and I run on the side when we have, full-time day jobs and run Believer and New Foundation and everything else. So there you go.
Oh my gosh, I know that life.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you. So if you've read Faith Unleavened, then you know about the app that was in beta where I met Ellison, my spouse. And so this is the mastermind behind that app. And so you guys have just been so incredible to me and Ellison in terms of our story. You guys were a part of our engagement video. I mean, it was an incredible time. So I feel so much love for you in my heart. And so this episode, I kind of actually want to talk about dating in the queer community, because I think what we've seen and as people will hear in some of the episodes is there are a lot of queer Christians who are like, how do I date? There's a part in the book where I talk about I was too Jesus-y for the non-Christian apps, but then I was just too, queer for the Christian apps, right? And so you all have created something so beautiful, and I'd love to just talk about the brilliance, the idea to match queer Christians based on values. Like, where did that come from? Tell us the story.
Yeah, that's a lot. And first off, congratulations. I just want to celebrate. I don't know. Queer love is just so important to celebrate. And I think we just need more examples of it. So congratulations. I'm so happy you found your person. And
me too.
So happy.
Thank you.
Anyways.
Thank you.
Yeah. Literally, this is why I love Believers, because it's such a privilege to be able to allow people to have these connections. And it's not I'm not really doing anything. I just built a platform and people use the platform. But oh man, whenever anybody messages me about, hey, I found my spouse or whatever, or a partner, I get very emotional. So I will hopefully not cry, but here we go. So my backstory, I think to understand Believer and why I built Believer, you kind of need to know a little bit about the craziness that is my life. So I have a lot of church trauma. And I came from two very big mega churches. So one was New Life Church in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with Ted Haggard. I went to his church. Yeah. And so if you're steeped in the evangelical world of church, Ted Haggard is a very big name. He used to be on the board of Evangelical Churches of America or something like that. Who's a pretty big name. I remember one church service, George W. Bush spoke at the church service, which was looking back, I was like, what? That's a lot. And separation of church and state. What is that about? So anyways, he was on he often would tout being on a weekly call with George W. Bush. And I'm just like, what? So anyways, that was my church upbringing in high school. I also went to a private Christian school in high school too, on scholarship. And so it was just a lot. So I did that. And then I went to John Piper's church, who is,
no way.
Yeah. I was kicked out of his church for being a homosexual. And so, that was a very, very hard experience for me because it did a couple of things. So I went to Bethel University in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah.
it's a private Christian liberal arts school as well. For some reason, I was like, at the time, my brain said, I have to fight this. I called it SSA, same sex attraction, right? Which,
Yes.
whole side note on that feels like we make it a disease, which like just bothers me. I'm like, no, that I don't love that. And so I was, fighting SSA while at Bethel. And to do that and do that well, I went to John Piper's church where they like forced me into conversion therapy. To like still become a member and things like that. And like the conversion therapy was with somebody who wasn't a clinical psychologist and wasn't degreed or didn't have any credentials whatsoever. He was just a man that went through it himself and like is now not gay. And like one of the first things that he recommended, which I'm sorry, I have to say this. They're like, you should watch straight porn. And I was like,
no way. You're not serious.
Oh, 100%. They're like, this will solve it for you. Like, have you ever tried it? You should try it. And like, anyways. So that's like the history and like the background of all of like who Adam Evers is at this period of time. Right. I was fighting this quote unquote same-sex attraction, going on dates with women, whatever else. And then I moved to Oakland, California. Thank God.
Yeah. Oh God. Thank you.
Yeah. I moved to Oakland, California, or San Francisco first and then to Oakland. But I moved and that was a huge kind of transition point. And that's where I got kicked out of, I was removed from membership or kicked out of the church for being gay. I sent a very long letter to the elders explaining why I think that's wrong and hurtful and painful and whatever else. And then I started exploring, like, what does it mean to be gay and Christian and queer and Christian? And I finally came to terms with the fact that I'm like, okay, I'm gay and I don't think that God hates me for being gay. And I don't think that like, I'm going to go to hell for this. And so like, what does it mean to find community and build community in this area? Cause that's always been, I'm a community builder by heart. Like it's what I love doing. Yeah. It's what like drives me as a human. And so I went to QCF my first time, which QCF is Queer Christian Fellowship for all those that don't know. And I went and I looked around and I was like, okay, this is great. And I went to like the vendor tables and was like, wait, how do we like continue this and like not just do this here, but like, how do I meet other people? And like, there's so much privilege being able to go to a conference because it's expensive and like you have to travel and like that is privilege having the amount of resources to be able to do that. And so like, how do we make this community more accessible to the world? And so I was talking with a friend and I'm an Enneagram 3. And if
threes unite.
Yes. And if you know me, you know that like, I am a man of my word. And if you question me or tell me I can't do something, I'll be like, okay, cool. So one of my friends, I was walking around and I'm like, why don't we have an app? Like, this is stupid. Like, we should have an app. Like, all we have is Grindr. Like, that's trash, like literal trash. Like, it is a dumpster fire.
Yes.
And the thing that I kept on like indexing on is I'm like, the phrasing that we use, which is very similar to what you said, which is like, I'm too gay for the Christians and too Christian for the gays. And like, that's like how I was like framing it at the time. And so my friend was like, you should just build an app. And I was like, okay, why not? And so that's how Believer was born. And it was born out of my best friend, Brandon Flannery, and myself were the two co-founders. And we started the company and ran it. And I mean, it's still alive and it's still going. And I get emails all the time and it makes me so happy. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of out of spite a little bit because I'm like, no, like we deserve a spot and a place. And don't hate me for doing this, but like one of the things that I always kind of go back to are our core values. So we have 4 or 5 core values: believe, connect, celebrate, be true, and belong. And can I just read the last
please.
So the last one is belong. And this is like, so Brandon and I have spent hours thinking about these because we think it's really important for core values. And this is the one that I just always index on when anybody asks me like, why do you like, what is believer? Why? So this is what it says. We are fighting for something that has not existed up until this moment. A place where identities that have been at war with each other can finally find peace. a place where we can finally call home. Though we stand on the shoulders of giants, those who have fought for the community, there's still work to be done.
Mm.
And like, I get chills thinking about that because
Yes.
like, even in today's day and age
Yes.
of just the chaos that is all of the laws and the trauma that is all of the laws and legislation that's coming up in the United States and across the world, like, we deserve and are lovable, and we deserve love, and we are worthy of love, and like, we need a place to be able to find that.
Yes.
Okay, so your actual question was, why are we connecting on values as a company for people? So all that background for Believer, when we first started kind of developing Believer, it was really important to me that I have a vendetta against dating apps.
Come on, Adam.
I
Talk
will,
to us.
I will like just call it out. And people, you have either a love-hate relationship with Believer. It's just what it is. Either you join the app and you're like, okay, this is great. I see what the vision is for the app or whatever, but you will notice there are certain things that are not in there, and they are not in there for a very, can I cuss on this place?
Absolutely.
Fucking good reason. Like, it's for a very, very good reason. Example, we do in the app itself, we don't have height, we don't have weight, and we don't have race, because that is so problematic in so many different ways. Like,
yes.
the apps that are currently out there, in my opinion, they other us in so many different ways, and create this toxic environment of what I call build your own boyfriend, or build your own girlfriend, or build your own person. Right. And like, we as humans are created for connection and love and community. Right. But the problem is that we have these devices that have these apps on them that are just plugging into our brain and just drilling us full of dopamine 24/7, because they gamify the experience. And like, you are a human. You have dignity as a human because you are just a human, not because you believe the same thing that I do, but your inherent value as a mother human. Like, you have value, right? And that is the premise of how Believer started, was that every human has value and is worthy of dignity.
Yes.
And so, like, example, you will never swipe on someone's face, because you wouldn't do that in person. Like, you wouldn't go to an app, or you wouldn't go to a bar and be like, next. No one would do that. Like, literally no one. Right. And so, like, in the app, you're not going to be doing that. It's not a thing. You are forced to scroll down before you have the ability to say, I want to connect with this person, or I want to pass this person. Right. You have to go through that experience of like actually interacting with them.
Come on.
You're limited. Like, we put a limit on how many people you can connect with on a weekly basis, because it is another human and another person. You should spend the time, if you want to find a significant other, or you want to find a connection, spend the time and effort to do that. Don't just look at 5,000 profiles in a night and swipe through them. Like, the indignity of that experience as a human.
Yes.
Like, this is shitty. It's just shitty. And we as a community deserve better. And like, we need to do better. And maybe, I hope that this is better, but I also know that people hate it. So like,
I love it. I think it's so, gosh, I almost got emotional there, because I didn't even realize that's what you all were doing. Right. And I mean, I remember my experience now, but I'm like, that's true, because my partner, it's true, I couldn't see their face. Like, I write about that, actually. I'm like, I couldn't see their face, but the profile was so compelling to me. Then I found out that they're a white person, but it doesn't matter. And then we go on this whole other journey of them recognizing, hey, like, I'm actually non-binary. I'm not a female. But it's like, you fall in love with a person, right? And I was like, so we have this joke that, like, we have kangaroo orientation, meaning, like, if you were a kangaroo, that's my orientation. Like, I'm about you. And I love that, because it gives you the freedom to not only get to know yourself, but to kind of fall in love with people. And the other thing about the values is, one thing that's showing up in my marriage, so here's a plug for Believer, is like, the work of marriage it's still there, but
Yeah.
that foundational like value commitment, it
Mm.
makes arguments easier. You're
Yep.
fighting for the same things. You're
Yep.
not like so many people, Adam, have been in my DMs about like my husband is like all about guns and I don't really like I'm anti-gun and my husband is not, and so much turmoil because the church says male, female, love
Yep.
Jesus. Like,
Yep.
it's there is no connection on those deeper things. Can you name off the top a couple of the values options?
Yeah. So I totally can. But before I do that, I think
Yeah.
like let's talk about the values because I think
On.
there's a big reason why we did the values.
Hmm.
So again, with the dignity thing, like I'm focusing on the dignity thing of people and interacting. If there's actually like a lot of research on dating in
Hmm.
the world, and all the research points to if you want, and this is the caveat, if you want a long-term uh, healthy relationship, the easiest way to do that is to connect on shared values. And so like that's why we put in the values that we did in Believer, is because we believe that, and it's not, and it's, so just to be like super clear, it's not values that you
Yeah,
want in another person. It
that's
is
good.
your own personal values. Like what
Yes.
do I value,
Mhm.
and the sharing of those values. So
Yes.
we have 67 values.
Yes.
Um, how about I tell you mine?
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
I was like, let me just pull up in the app real quick
I know.
and
I'm like,
see what
what were
mine are.
mine? I can't remember. I mean, I know what they are, but like,
Yeah.
or what I
What does the app say? Okay, my profile. So, acceptance, accountability, achievement, Enneagram 3, accuracy, adventure,
yeah.
autonomy,
Yeah.
challenge. Yeah, so that's just some of them. But
Mm, mm, mm.
so yeah, for me, I think we did some research. So like, yeah, just to be clear, like this was actually, we worked with a university out of Southern California to kind of validate this methodology of how we connect people with values. And they were like, yes, like based on the research that we know about long-term relationships, the best way for people to be in relationship with each other is to have shared values.
Yes.
And so for me, it was really important that if we did do this, that it would be focused on research and
Yeah.
like data versus just like, we don't know what we're doing, right? Like, no, this is important.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Whew, there is so much like I did not realize behind the story.
Mm.
And so I guess my question is, one of the things that I heard about like right after I came out and I was like in the freedom of all of it. And someone was like, you need to have a hoe phase. And so many queer Christians are like, I'm not really a whole phase type of person.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm curious to know like whether you got backlash about that, like whether it felt like it was too close to like the marriage material type conversation. Did you get any backlash about that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
We did get backlash. And so like the thing that's really interesting, we try to keep Believer very agnostic. And that was like a very conscious choice. Like, for example, we don't have congregations or denominations within Believer.
Mhm.
The biggest thing for us is like, do you identify as broadly Christian? Right.
Mhm.
It is,
So
we use Christian as a category
mhm.
because like, here's the deal, cards on the table. I don't know if I would identify as Christian anymore because of what is currently existing in the world of Christendom, right? Like I'm like, that's not my
Samesies.
Christianity.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
don't know what that is, but that's not me. And I want to like distance myself
Mhm.
from that.
Mhm.
Um, so all that to say, we have like a broader view, I guess, if you will. And so we like, for example, in the app, we say relationships. We don't necessarily say like boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever else. And the reason for that is because we want to have broad definitions of relationship. If you want to have a throuple, have a throuple. If you're polyamorous, be polyamorous. Like I don't
Mhm.
care. That
Mhm.
is yours. Like that is between you and God. It is not my job to judge at
Right.
all. And like candidly, I don't think it's a morality thing anymore. But
Absolutely.
like
It's
whatever.
ethics.
Yeah.
Ethics.
Exactly. And so I'm like, for me, I don't want to dictate how another person finds relationship or define what their relationship is. I
Mhm.
just want to provide a platform for them to do it on.
Mhm.
Like, and I want it to work well, and I want them to be able to interact well, and I want to be able to make sure people are safe. And that's like all that I care about. It's not my job to define what a relationship is. It's
Mhm.
just not.
So here's the thing, I'm like something that you said really like stuck out to me, and
Mm.
it's really having conversations about ethics, because or sexual ethics. I feel like that's an old conversation in some ways, and then I think there's a resurgence of that
Yeah.
conversation. Nadia Bolz-Weber wrote a book a while back
Yeah.
about like sexual ethic and stuff like that. But talk to us about that for those, because again, a lot of my listeners are like, I have a different types. Some are just homies, so hey homies. Others are those that are kind of listening because they've just left the toxicity.
Mm,
They've just come out. Like they're very, very green in this
mm,
space. And so a sexual ethics conversation might be new. And then there's other people who are sneak listening.
I got you.
And so that's the crew we're dealing with here. So
Yeah.
talk to, what is sexual ethic and what's the difference between ethics and morality, in your opinion?
Ooh, that is a good deep question. Yeah, so I think for me, and this is my own personal opinion and whatever you want to call it. I think for me, the biggest thing that I would say around like a sexual ethic is understanding who you are and who you are in your context.
Mhm.
Because I think context really matters here.
Mhm.
Um, uh, and I think like when you think about ethics versus morality. Morality is normally like personal convictions, right, around something.
Mhm.
And ethics, on the other hand, more is like a formal process for morality in a certain context. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? Like the difference?
It
And
does.
so for me, morality is more, how does this make me feel as a person? Do I agree with this? Yes or no? And then ethics is more, like for example, doctors have like the do no harm thing, right? With it, which is like a very traditional ethical view of like do no harm to somebody else. And I
Mhm.
think it normally has a tendency to be, ethics are normally like cultural or like communal, and then morality is, I would view it as more like internal work,
Mhm.
right? And so for me, something can be both ethical and moral, or it could be not ethical and not moral, or like a combination of the two. And it really just depends on your context. Like
Exactly.
when I was at Bethlehem, and I'll admit it, I had a little bit of a hoe phase. Don't pay. I was in San Francisco.
Yay.
I was in San
Okay,
Francisco.
so yeah,
Okay, like
basically it's like in the water. You have to
yeah,
have O phase. It's like your initiation.
kind of. Yeah, it's like you moved to San Francisco and like
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
San Francisco.
it's San Francisco. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, yeah. I brought mom. I read the Bible with every single one of them. We prayed together. I swear. I swear.
Hey
That's what we did.
mom,
Hey, mom.
don't worry.
She knows. She's fine. And so like my morality around that at the time though was mixed. Like I was struggling and going through that of like, is it okay? The biggest one was premarital sex. Like, oh
Mhm.
my God, am I gonna burn in hell and die if I have premarital sex?
Mhm.
And I think the sexual ethic that I came from Christianity was purity culture,
Yeah.
right? Which is like, nope, you're gonna go to hell. You are supposed to save yourself for marriage. And here's the thing though that I will. This is gonna be controversial, and someone's gonna hate me for this and probably email me and be like, Adam, you're whatever. That's fine. My email is adam@believer.app. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about it.
Come on, Brady said.
Yeah, like let's go. Um, the thing for me is I don't think about, I've actually kind of like reframed my morality, and it's more about um, choices and the consequences of those choices, whether
Yes.
they be something that is in alignment with my values and who I am, or something that's not in alignment with my values and who I am, or who I want to be. And so,
Mhm.
like, an example of this is um, I went through a hoe phase.
Mhm.
And I am now in a long-term committed monogamous relationship with my partner, who I found a believer. His name's Will.
Hey.
Um, yeah, it's like the hair club for men. It worked for me too, right? Like,
Hey,
uh,
Will.
yeah. Which I am like madly, deeply in love with this man.
I get
Like, just yeah.
Sure.
and so much like, it's kind of scary sometimes, right?
Indeed.
Um,
Indeed.
but the where I was going with this was because I did have a hoe phase, and because sex for me used to be very different in terms of fantasy, in terms of whatever. There's a lot of things that Christians will teach, which, there's like two main ones, which is like the duct tape thing, right? Where they're
Mhm.
like, your sexuality is like duct tape. You stick it on and you unstick it, and you stick it on and you unstick it, and you stick it on, and then like it gets unsticky, right? And like, listen, that's problematic.
It is.
Completely agree. But also, there is, in my opinion, a kernel of truth, because my like, this is, Will and I have talked about this often and openly,
Mhm.
like having a sexual fantasy and always living into that sexual fantasy. When you get into a committed monogamous relationship, if that's what you want, maybe you don't want that. That's fine.
Mhm.
But this is for me. I'm speaking for me,
Mhm.
because this is what we have and this is what we want. It
Mhm.
has been difficult in
Mm.
our relationship, specifically sexually, because we both had these experiences of when we could have fantasies and just have fantasies whenever we wanted. And
Right.
so our sexual ethic within relationship changed and has been changing as long as this process. And so,
Wow.
like, do I think that purity culture is a horrible thing? Yes. Do I think it's stunting and whatever else? 100%. But
Mhm.
also, I think that we need to have a conscious conversation
Mhm.
around actions and what are your values and how your actions are aligning with those values and aligning with the person that you want to be, and
Yes.
understanding, like, if you are on a dopamine kick 24/7, just hooking up all of the time, that's fine. More power to you. Oh my God, I
Mhm.
did it. It was wonderful. But
Mhm.
also, there are consequences there,
Mhm.
and there's no morality or ethics around this. It's not good
Indeed.
or bad. It is just, you need to understand what
Mhm.
that then equates to long term. And for me personally, I wanted a monogamous long-term relationship. It's just
Mhm.
what I want.
Mhm.
It's what Will wants too. And
Mhm.
so, and in that, we now candidly have like difficulties in our relationship because of that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like, that's just the truth of the matter. And that's just because of choices. Doesn't make us good, doesn't make us bad, doesn't make it moral or not moral, or ethical or not ethical. It just is. It just is.
That
Is
is
that
so good. Yeah. Whew, let's let that hang in the air right quick, because I have a tendency, like, I don't like to move on from stuff that I feel like has zip and wisdom on it. Um, so thank you for that. That was wisdom. I am so I guess the word is provoked by that, because I think about Jesus. So I would still consider myself a person that follows Joshua the Nazarene.
mm,
Like um I'm with that.
yes.
But like, I love his technique because it's never morality. It's
Mm-hmm.
always fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you bite into a rotten apple, you bite into a ripe apple. You don't need to go to seminary to find out which tree is bad. You can tell by how it tastes, by how it looks, by how it makes you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the beauty and the freedom of that. I saw, speaking of John Piper, I saw Abraham Piper post
Yeah.
something recently about moral relativism and how we were taught that that was so like bad. But like, looking at Jesus going like, however you want to be treated, treat other people that way. He's using the person
Mm-hmm.
themselves as a reference point. That is moral relativism, right? Like,
Yep.
and thinking about rereading Jesus on the other side of whiteness and leaven, and I'm still coming out of patriarchy and misogyny. I don't think I
Mm.
fully, that thing is deep. But I think
Yeah.
I'm pretty aware of whiteness. Like, I'm not doing whiteness. So like learning to follow Jesus on the other side and seeing these passages like explode again. Like, oh,
Mm.
that's what that's like. Have you had that experience, like, spiritually? Like, where would you say that you are?
Ooh, that's a good question. Huh. So I'm a very open, honest
Yeah.
person, and
Do
so
it.
like, I'll just,
Yeah.
my relationship with Jesus is very complicated.
Yeah.
And I think I would consider myself spiritual, and I would still consider myself like, I don't know what it means to be like a follower of Jesus anymore.
Right.
Like
Right.
I don't really understand that language or where that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But there is something beautiful about Jesus that is attractive to me.
Yes.
And that is what is attractive to me. And I think I'm very thankful for the community that I'm involved with. I go to New City Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. What's up? Shout out.
Hey, I'm gonna be there.
Are you really?
Yeah, I'm preaching on October 15th.
I will see you then.
Cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'll be in the crowd cheering you on. Um, so anyways, the thing that I've appreciated about um about that, and like this is just, I'm gonna own some stuff real quick. Like the work of anti-racism for me has only intensified given the political climate and everything else that's happened in the world. And like, I know that me as a white person, I am racist. Like it just, it
Thank you
is,
for saying that.
yeah, it is by nature. Like I know that
Mhm,
I am racist because I am white.
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
and I can't escape that. And
mhm,
it's shitty. But
mhm.
also at the same time, I have work to do to work through that in anti-racism. And so
Come.
the thing that I found that was the most helpful and in this context of like rediscovering Jesus was actually in an embodied anti-racism course that my church put on.
Mm,
Um, and like understanding and experiencing Jesus and even like his grace and mercy in the
mhm,
fact that I am a racist white person.
mhm.
And
Come on, Adam.
like that is so healing
Yes.
to both know, yes, you are racist. I am racist. Like
Mhm,
that is just a fact of the matter. But
mhm,
yet, like I hate to use the Jesus-y language, but like the blood of Jesus and like because that's like that resonated with me. It still
mhm,
kind of resonates with me. Like
mhm.
the mercy and grace from Jesus around that is so intense. And I felt that in my body. And I felt that in a very meaningful way when I was working through and still am like,
Yeah.
good God, there's so much work to do.
Yeah.
But like still felt that. And I'd say like that would probably be my latest, like most um relational piece
Mhm,
with Jesus.
mm,
And so like, do I have it right or perfect? No. And we're still trying to figure out what our relationship looks like.
mhm,
But I like framing it in the way of like relationship now
mhm.
versus whatever else, because I think it is, and I want it to be that.
Yes. That is incredible. Like, I think for me, it wasn't so much the blood that stated was the, well, I guess because of communion. Like,
Mm,
communion is still was always so very sacred for me when I
yeah.
was confronting the racism, right? And it's kind of like there's a person out in California, maybe they're in Oakland, Tori Weiston Surden. I don't know if
Mm,
you've heard of her, but she wrote a book called Critical Mentoring, and she was talking about how we have to embed anti-racism in the way that we mentor. And she goes, you know, if white supremacy is the water and the air, then
mm,
the work of anti-racism is clearing that stuff out. And it's the same way. Like there's nothing wrong with you going, yeah, as a white person, I'm pretty sure I'm racist. It's like it's the air you breathe, like in this
mhm,
country. So to deny that is actually more of a disservice. It feels good, and it makes me feel as a person of color who has had been on the like receiving end of all of the nasty stuff about whiteness, like
mm,
to hear that and go, actually, I can trust you
mm,
because you have clarity about who you are. And so for me, I feel like there are more people that need to at least own that. And now what? It doesn't mean that's where you stay, it means that's where you start, right?
yes.
And
Yes.
I just really appreciate you saying that. I think that that's whew, you're dropping bombs. I'm like on this journey of like pacifism and nonviolence right now. I'm like, ooh, do I say drop bombs? I don't know if I should.
you're, you're a better person than I am. I'm not on that journey. That is not my journey.
Oh
I'm on the like, I'm on the like, people be making me angry and I'm gonna say something because like I'm tired of not saying anything.
Oh my gosh. So that's your fault, Adam. My partner's a pacifist. And so now I have to have these conversations all the live long day. Like,
Listen, when you want to drop some bombs, you can come talk to me, okay?
that's what we'll do. Threes unite, dropping bombs unite.
Exactly.
So like as we land, right? Like this is a phenomenal. As we land, the question that I ask everyone, and I love how you talked about Jesus and your relationship to Jesus. So going off of that, like what would you say that you're bringing with you from the rubble of what's left of that faith you once had?
Yeah. I think there's like one big overarching thing and then like two little things. So
Mhm.
big overarching one is community.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think the thing that church does well is
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
And I think, I don't know about you, but like the pandemic was hard for me.
Mhm.
I was very isolated. I went through some very, very dark times. And I think for me, I understood my need for people
Mhm.
and my need to be in community with people. And I don't know if people like fully understand what that actually means when I say that, but I mean like deep, intimate, where people know you, know
Yes.
your shit. Like we are in community
Come on.
together, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And I had that. And I want to take that from the rubble that is my past experiences with church and bring that forward.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something that's really important to me. So that's like the major theme. I would say the two like minor themes, grace and love.
Yeah.
Um, man, there is so much hate and so
Mhm.
much unlove. And I think the thing that bothers me is love. Love spurs us to inclusivity.
It does. Yes.
And I think how we have defined inclusivity is incorrect.
Come on.
Um, I feel like I'm just preaching a sermon.
You sure are. And I'm with it. If I had a tambourine, my G, I would be banging it right now. Trust and believe that.
Yeah. And I think like inclusivity does not mean um inclusivity does not mean that you just associate with people that agree with you all the time. Um and I think inclusivity and the work of actually being inclusive is providing a safe space for disagreement and providing a safe space for difference. And
Yes.
like the language that I have started using is different is not less than.
Mhm.
Like like and like can we just let that sink in? Like difference does not mean less than. And I think for me in the past I've had this view that anything different from me, for example, at John Piper's church, right? Like, oh, they didn't do Christianity the same way. It's different. They're less than, right? Which
Mhm.
is so toxic and so permeated in our culture as humans.
Mhm.
Oh, they're a Republican,
Mhm.
less than, right?
Mhm.
Like, oh, they're a progressive,
Yeah.
less than.
Mhm.
No, absolutely not. That's not inclusive. That's
Mhm.
not love. That's not grace. That's not Jesus.
Come
Like
on.
it's just not. And
Come
so
on.
like for me, that grace, that love, and that leads me to like what inclusivity actually means and what
Mhm.
it means to be community and what it means to be inclusive in that community is like my new, not new, but like how and what I want to bring from the rubbles that is my whatever
Mhm.
faith and then bring that forward.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Whew. Amen. Amen. Whew. Are you binging anything? Any TV show, movie, music,
Yes.
alcohol? I don't care.
Yes. Yes. So I'm a gin and tonic guy. So I love gin and tonics. If we ever hang out, like give me a G&T and I'm a happy man.
For sure.
Or rosé all day.
Okay.
So that's like my little bingey there. The other thing that I binge on, my partner and I love Foundation on Apple TV. It's like a it's so good. It's so good. It's basically like a futuristic dystopian world type deal, but the visuals and the graphics and the storytelling are just chef's kiss. Like it's
Wow.
one of the best, um, one of the best probably shows I've seen in a very, 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 very long time. Like it's
Wow.
phenomenal. Absolutely
Okay,
phenomenal.
for sure. All right. Last thing. Any
Yeah.
words to live by? You know, you've got
um,
an idea of who our audience is, so have them in mind as you think about that.
yeah. Um, I think, I think if there's going to be a lot of hard times, being gay and being Christian is hard. It's not easy because you have two identities fighting
Mhm.
against each other, and you have two communities literally at war
Mhm.
with each other. And I just want to like call that out and say like that if you feel like you have this war within inside of you, yes, you probably do.
Mhm.
Like, and there probably is some things going on, right?
Mhm.
But I think like I actually wrote this down like yesterday, so this is very relevant. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. And like there's this quote that I love that says, "This is what hard feels like."
Mm.
I think it's important to understand what hard feels like, and this is why most people can't do it, because this is what hard feels like.
Tension. Yeah.
That tension, that hardness, that just all of the hard. And I think like feel it and also know you're going to be okay. Like you're going to be okay. And you can move in on this. And this is what hard feels like. And this is normally like when you feel that hardness, this is where either you have a choice. You can either like give up and hey, that's okay too. Because sometimes we give up and it's hard. Or you can press through. But like this is what it feels like to be hard, and like recognize that you're in that space and feel that feeling so that you have the power to move forward in the future. And you can feel like this is the hard thing and acknowledge it.
Woo! That right there is a word, Adam. I think that's the title right now. I'm taking that and I'm making that the title. I'll give you the credit for it. Last thing.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? So I want you to say a little bit more about your nonprofit too.
Yeah. So people can find me online. I'm basically Adam Evers everywhere. So Adam Evers basically everywhere. So we talked a lot about Believer. New Foundation is basically Will and I's love child, is probably like the best way to phrase it. So here's the thing. I love the progressive kind of Christian community. And I think candidly, we do a really shitty job of technology. And Will and I are technology people. We work at a startup. Will's a designer. I'm like a operations kind of back end developer type dude. And so New Foundation is a nonprofit that builds networks of communities, resources, and events that are inclusive, anti-racist, Jesus loving, and social justice oriented.
What? What's the website?
New.foundation. So it's just nu.foundation. And we're NU Foundation on basically every other platform too, on Instagram, on Twitter, whatever else. And like our vision, our mission, what we want to do is basically create tools and resources for this community to help build community, help find each other. So like nu.community is a affirming church search engine. So Church Clarity, we love them. They've done incredible work. But they have some technology problems in our opinion. Like it's not mobile friendly. You can't like click a button and say, find me, and it finds churches around you. Right. And so like all that is built in New Community, nu.community. And so we want to use technology how it should be used, which is like efficiency and helpful, and make it so that people can find each other and create community.
Oh my gosh. So check that out, y'all. Adam, it's been like an absolute pleasure. And like, I feel even more proud to have like stumbled upon the app. Shout out to Logan who sent me the link to the Believer app when it was in beta. I'm just so thankful for you, thankful for what you're doing, thankful you're in love, thankful you're telling your story. And I hope to have you back. It's been
awesome. Yeah. And like, it's great to like finally, chat for longer than 5 minutes. Yes.
I know. So cool.
And I'm so excited for y'all and love you all. And I'm a cheerleader on your side. Just yes. So yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you for listening. To put your money in your heart is donate to Subculture Inc. and clear the path for Black students today.